Secrets in Hollywood that never make it to the headlines, whispers hidden behind cigarette smoke, faded scripts, and locked dressing room doors. And one of the quietest, most dangerous secrets of the 1970s belonged to the man everyone thought they knew, Peter Falk. Columbo, the trenchcoat detective who pretended not to notice everything, even while he noticed too much. But behind the gentle smile, behind the glass eye that made him unforgettable, was a story the studio swore would never see daylight. It began in 1974, when Columbo was at the height of its success. Peter was adored by millions, funny, charming, unpredictable, and absolutely irresistible to one woman in particular, a rising actress from a rival NBC series, beautiful, quick-witted, and nearly 20 years younger. The two met during a network party in Burbank. Witnesses said they talked for hours in a dark corner of the room, her hand resting on his arm, his voice lowered to a softness no one had heard before. Then came the nights, late rehearsals that weren't on the schedule. Peter's car spotted outside her apartment long after midnight. A neighbor claimed she saw them through the curtains, a silhouette leaning in, her head tilted back, his trench coat hanging on the chair beside them. The studio tried to bury it. NBC executives called it impossible. But the rumors grew louder when a crew member swore he found them on the Columbo set, in the detective's trailer, kissing in the dim light of a single lamp. She disappeared from television weeks later. No explanation. Her name quietly erased from upcoming scripts. Peter returned to work with that familiar smile, but those who knew him said something in his eyes had changed. A softness. A sadness. A secret he could never talk his way out of. Hollywood called it gossip, but those who were there called it something else, the only mystery Columbo never solved on screen. By early 1975, the rumor had outgrown the whispers that carried it. What began as soft gossip between cameramen had slipped into the halls of NBC, into meetings behind frosted glass doors, and into the one place Hollywood feared most, the tabloids. Peter Falk was the studio's golden detective. Columbo wasn't just a show, it was a brand worth millions. A scandal involving its lead actor, especially with a young, rising actress from a competing series, could shatter everything. NBC moved fast. Executives summoned Peter into a private meeting. No lawyers. No agents. Just a contract, an ashtray, and a warning. End it, or the network ends you. But by then, it wasn't so simple. Feelings had grown. The kind that didn't fit on cue cards. Crew members noticed the change immediately. Peter, usually warm and witty, became quieter. He lingered in corners between takes, staring at the floor or out a window. Sometimes he'd rehearse lines alone in his trailer, long after everyone else had gone home. And she, the young actress with the sharp smile, began to collapse under the pressure. Paparazzi started following her car. Television executives demanded she deny everything. At one point, ABC threatened to terminate her contract for conduct unbecoming of a network representative, a phrase Hollywood used when it needed guilt without proof. Then came the night that changed everything. A photographer snapped a blurred photo outside stage 27. Peter Falk stepping out of his trailer, and behind him, the unmistakable silhouette of the actress, her coat clutched tightly, her eyes downcast. The image was grainy and dim, but it didn't need to be clear to be damning. NBC bought the photo before the tabloids could. Paid a fortune for it. Locked it away. Still, copies circulated in whispers, in private rooms, in late-night Hollywood bars. Within days, the actress was removed from her show. Official reason: creative redirection. Northern accent. Unofficially, she'd flown too close to a star the studio refused to dim. She left Los Angeles shortly after. A quiet bus ride to San Francisco. No press, no farewell. Just a silence heavy enough to drown in. Peter Falk continued filming Columbo, but those who watched him closely noticed the shift. A sadness lingered behind the charm, a quiet grief just beneath the detective's trademark slouch. In scenes where he paused to think, hand on his forehead, coat slightly wrinkled, it felt like the weight he was carrying wasn't just part of the act anymore. Hollywood pretended nothing had happened. The studios moved on, the headlines faded, but the man beneath the trench coat never did. Some mysteries stay unsolved on purpose. And for Peter Falk, this was the one case Columbo could never close. Time has a strange way of softening the loudest scandals and sharpening the quietest ones. For Peter Falk, the world eventually forgot the whispers, but he never did. As the years slipped by, the trench coat came off, the cigars burned shorter, and Columbo faded from weekly broadcasts into late-night reruns. But the memory of that forbidden love followed him like a shadow he couldn't outsmart. People close to him said that sometimes, between takes or in the middle of dinner, he would drift, eyes narrowing as if he were solving something only he could see. A ghost of a memory. Face he could no longer say aloud. He never mentioned her name again, not to friends, not to his wife, not even in his memoir drafts. But in the margins of one notebook he kept from the 1980s, there was a single line written again and again. Some cases stay with you. When his career slowed, Peter turned to painting, thousands of canvases in bold, chaotic colors. But hidden among them were a few quiet portraits, a silhouette of a woman looking out a window, a shadow sitting alone on a beach at dusk, a pair of hands almost touching. He never sold those paintings. He never explained them. He simply kept them stacked in a corner of his studio, facing the wall like secrets too tender to display. In the 2000s, as illness began to erode his sharpness, Peter became more vulnerable, sometimes forgetting words, sometimes forgetting scenes he'd filmed decades earlier, but never forgetting her. One night, a friend visiting the house found Peter sitting on the porch at dusk, coat draped loosely over his shoulders. He was looking at the horizon the way Columbo looked at a suspect, soft, searching, wounded. When asked what he was thinking, Peter smiled faintly and said, "Funny thing about the truth, it always shows up late." His final years were quiet, filled with art, family, and reruns playing softly in the background. But those who saw him up close said that sometimes, when Columbo appeared on screen, he'd lean back, close his eyes, and whisper something too low for anyone to hear. A name, maybe. Or a memory, or the kind of apology that arrives decades after the chance to speak it. When he passed in 2011, Hollywood mourned the detective who fooled everyone by pretending not to notice anything, while noticing everything. But beyond the tributes, beyond the legacy, there remains one quiet truth about Peter Falk, that even the cleverest detective can lose a case of the heart. And that sometimes, the most haunting mysteries are the ones we carry to the grave.